There are people who look you straight in the eye, smile warmly, say things that sound sincerely caring, and then turn out to be the ones who stab you the deepest in the back. The most painful part is not the betrayal itself. It is the feeling that you trusted the wrong person. You opened up. You thought maybe, finally, you had met the right one. But no, that smile was just a mask. That kindness was only a cover, and underneath it was weakness, jealousy, and the soul too fragile to face the truth directly. A strong person does not need to fake friendliness to harm someone else. Only the weak smile and betray at the same time. Act kind while quietly calculating. And if you have ever been hurt by someone like that, you know how haunting it feels. It makes you lose trust in other people, and sometimes even lose your own peace. So why are they like that? What makes a person smile in your face and then betray you right after? And more importantly, how do you recognize them before it is too late? In this video, we are going to break down that entire truth through the lens of Stoic philosophy. There is something I have realized after a lot of collisions in life. The people who hurt us the deepest usually are not the obvious enemies. They are the ones who never dared to live honestly. The ones who do not have the strength to say what they really think. The ones who fear confrontation, fear being inferior, fear having the smallness inside them exposed, and so they choose the most dangerous way, smiling to get close to you, then betraying you when your guard is down. Sounds painful, right? But Stoicism does not teach us bitterness. Stoicism teaches us to look straight at things, to see people clearly, to see their nature clearly. No sugarcoating, no illusions, no lying to ourselves with comforting hopes. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." And that is also the mistake many people make in relationships. We think we understand the person in front of us just because they speak gently. We think they are good just because they smile. We think they are sincere just because they know how to make us feel comfortable. But what is the truth? A smile proves nothing about character. Friendliness proves nothing about loyalty. And gentle words have never been proof of a strong soul. This is the first thing you need to understand. Betrayal does not begin with the act. It begins with weakness inside. A strong person may not like you, but they will say it clearly. They may disagree with you, but they will face you directly. They may walk away, but they do not need to put on a show. They do not need a mask. They do not need to smile while hiding a knife. The weak are different. They do not dare face conflict directly, because they are afraid. They do not dare be honest, because they are afraid of losing their good image. They do not dare admit they are jealous, because their ego is too fragile. So they choose the more cowardly path, acting kind to hide their intentions. That is not strength.
That is cowardice wrapped in a smile.
Think about the modern workplace. How many people act supportive to your face, but in a meeting subtly tear down your achievements? How many people call you brother, call you a teammate, but when a promotion opportunity appears, they are ready to push you out of the way? How many people congratulate you with so much enthusiasm, but deep inside, they are only trying to swallow the discomfort of seeing you have what they do not? Life today is full of people like that. And what is scary is how much more sophisticated they are becoming. They do not betray in crude ways anymore. They betray politely, civilly, innocently. They say, "I was just giving feedback." They say, "I did not mean anything bad." They say, "Maybe you misunderstood." They speak softly, smoothly, skillfully. But the damage they leave behind is real. The wound they cause is real. The mental harm is real too. And that is why so many people get betrayed and still do not dare call it what it was. Because the betrayer does not wear the face of a villain. They wear a likable face, sometimes even a kind one. But Stoicism forces us to wake up. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." I love this quote, because it tears open an uncomfortable truth. A truly good person does not need to perform. A truly strong person does not need to play the role of a good person. They live consistently. They do not split their character into two halves. One half for people to see, and one half for quietly harming others. Only weak people live two-faced. Only weak people need a beautiful version on the outside to hide the rot within. And if you are asking yourself, why did they betray me? What did I do wrong? Stop for a moment. Betrayal is not always a verdict on your worth. Sometimes, it is just a mirror exposing how small they are. Hear this carefully. The person who betrays you usually does not do it because you are not enough.
They do it because they are not strong enough to face the fact that you are better, clearer, or calmer than they are. This is the most painful part. A lot of betrayal does not come from some grand hatred. It comes from quiet jealousy. A kind of jealousy that never gets named. A quiet resentment that builds over time. The calmer you are, the more restless they become. The more disciplined you are, the more scattered they feel. The more trusted you are, the more invisible they feel. The more upright you live, the smaller they feel. And instead of fixing themselves, they choose to pull you down. Instead of growing up, they choose betrayal. Instead of facing their own shame, they turn you into the target. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who always smiles at you, but their eyes are never truly happy when you succeed. Someone who always says, "I'm happy for you," but the energy feels cold. Someone who is always close, but never truly wants to see you shine. That is when you need to understand. Not everyone close to you is for you. Stoicism teaches us a very practical lesson. Do not judge people by what they say in peaceful moments. Watch them when their ego gets touched. How do they react when you succeed? How do they react when you set boundaries? How do they react when you are no longer easy to control? How does their true nature show up when you stop pleasing them? That is the real test. Because strong people respect boundaries. Weak people see your boundaries as a personal insult. Strong people can genuinely be happy for someone else's success. Weak people smile on the outside, while inside they are burning with inferiority. And from that feeling, betrayal begins to grow. It starts with a few vague comments, a little talking behind your back, a little twisting of the story, one accidental reveal of your secret, one moment of silence when you needed them to speak, one act of pretending to stay neutral while really letting you get hurt. Do you see it? Betrayal is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, soft, smooth, and that is exactly why it is dangerous. There is a kind of weakness that is extremely common in this era, emotional weakness paired with strong social performance. They know exactly what to say to be liked. They know exactly what to post to maintain a good image. They know exactly how to act in public to look kind. But inside, they are chaotic, insecure, jealous, easily wounded, and deeply afraid of comparison. Social media only makes this kind of person grow faster, because now looking good matters more than living well. Making an impression matters more than building character. A lot of people care more about appearing moral than actually being moral. They want to be seen as good people, but they are not willing to do the hard work of being one, building character, taking responsibility, controlling their lower emotions, and living consistently even when nobody is watching. So they choose the shortcut, and that shortcut is pretending. That is why you should not be surprised when the people who talk the most about kindness are the very ones who act the most cruelly when you are not there. Do not be surprised when the people who preach principles are the first to turn on you for a small benefit. Do not be surprised when the friendliest people are the ones carrying the most envy. Weak people usually do not have the strength to live honestly. They only have the strength to perform. So how do you recognize them? The first sign, they agree with you too easily to your face, but rarely truly stand with you under pressure. These people often say, "Yeah, exactly. You're right. I support you." It feels good to hear, but when action is needed, they disappear. When it is time to speak, they go silent. When it is time to protect what is right, they choose safety for themselves. You need to remember one simple rule. Loyalty is not measured by words of agreement. It is measured by action in unfavorable moments. Anyone can smile when there is no risk. Anyone can be warm when it costs them nothing. But when a relationship demands courage, demands conviction, demands that they lose a little for the sake of what is right, that is when you find out who is really standing beside you. The second sign, they give you a subtle off feeling, but you cannot explain why. I believe this very strongly. Your body often detects dishonesty before your mind does. There are people who speak perfectly, politely, charmingly, but after every interaction you feel drained, you feel guarded, you feel like your energy was just pulled out of you. You have no clear evidence, but your intuition keeps knocking. Do not ignore that. Stoicism does not teach paranoid suspicion, but Stoicism does teach observation, repeated observation, pattern observation, watching the gap between words and behavior. If someone keeps confusing you, sometimes very kind, sometimes very cold, sometimes pulling you close, sometimes making you feel unsafe, there is a high chance they are not real, and people who are not real, sooner or later will hurt you. The third sign, they cannot genuinely feel happy for other people's success. This is a big one. A strong person sees someone better than them, and they learn. A weak person sees someone better than them, and feels irritated. A strong person sees someone else shine, and feels inspired. A weak person sees someone else shine, and feels threatened. Why? Because their entire sense of worth depends on being above other people. So when you rise, they do not just see your success, they feel themselves being lowered, and that is when the smile starts to bend. They still smile, but it is not warm anymore. They still congratulate you, but very quickly. They still clap, but their eyes do not light up. And then, after that, the stories begin. They probably just got lucky. They probably had someone backing them. I heard it's not really what people think. That is how weak people numb their own inferiority. They drag your value down so they do not have to raise their own. But you have to understand, this is not your war. This is an inner battle they are losing. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Weak people live heavily inside their own distorted imagination. They imagine others look down on them. They imagine they are being left behind. They imagine another person's success is a personal insult. And because they live inside those illusions, they respond with very real acts of betrayal. The fourth sign, they want to know too much about you while revealing very little about themselves. Have you noticed that? People who are likely to betray you often love collecting information. They listen carefully. They remember details well. They know your weak spots, your worries, your private matters, but they do not open up in the same way. Why? Because to them, information is not for connection. Information is for protection, and sometimes for future use. That is why you need to learn maturity in what you share. Not everyone who makes you feel understood deserves access to your whole story. In modern life, this matters a lot. At work, do not unload all your frustrations to someone you have only known a few months. In friendships, do not hand over all your weak points to someone who has only proven they are pleasant, not that they are steady. In love, do not confuse early attention with depth of character. Opening up too early is often the fastest way to hand weapons to someone who has not earned them. It may sound cold, but really it is self-protection. And Stoicism is practical about that. It does not tell you to shut your heart. It tells you to let reason stand guard at the gate of your heart. The fifth sign, they always want to preserve an innocent image. This is what makes them the most dangerous. A strong person can admit when they are wrong. A weak person cannot. They need to feel like they are still a good person, at any cost. So even when they betray you, they still want to keep a clean appearance. They will redirect the story. They will make you look overly sensitive. They will say you misunderstood. They will turn your pain reaction into evidence that you are the problem. In other words, they do not just betray you, they also want to keep themselves in the role of the victim or the innocent one. That is why, after betrayal, a lot of people end up confused, not just hurt, but doubting themselves. Am I overthinking this? Am I too difficult? Am I making too much of it? No, not always. Sometimes you hurt because you saw their true nature correctly, but they are so good at acting that they make you feel guilty for noticing it. If you have been through that, I want to say this very clearly. Your feelings are not invalid just because that person still looks kind in front of the crowd. Some truths can only be felt by the one who got stabbed. So what do you do when you realize you are close to someone like this? The first Stoic lesson: do not try to change them. This is a very common mistake. A lot of people see someone who is jealous, fake, two-faced, and think that if they are more sincere, better, more patient, then the other person will soften. No, you cannot heal someone who benefits from their own distortion. You cannot give character to someone who does not want to build it. You cannot use kindness to force a weak person into integrity. Sometimes kindness in the wrong place does not save anyone. It only keeps you wounded longer. The second lesson: stop arguing to make them admit it. Weak people rarely become honest after betrayal, because to admit it, they would have to look at themselves, and that is exactly what they cannot bear. So instead of owning it, they will twist, justify, reverse blame, and distract. The harder you try to force a confession, the more you get dragged into an exhausting performance. Stoicism teaches us to preserve energy for what we can control. You cannot control another person's conscience. You can only control whether you still allow them access to your life. That is real power. Not shouting louder, not getting revenge for the pain, not exposing them in public just to win a short battle, but seeing clearly and removing their access to your peace. The third lesson: set boundaries without over-explaining. Mature men often fall into a trap, thinking every decision to create distance must be explained in full detail to prove they are fair. But the truth is, not everyone deserves a full report on why you are stepping away. Some people just need less information, less opportunity, less access into your life. And that is enough. You do not need to declare war. You do not need to post cryptic messages online. You do not need some explosive confrontation. Just reduce contact. Stop sharing private things. Stop seeking their validation. Stop giving them a front row seat in your life. Calmness is sometimes the strongest way to close a door. The fourth lesson: do not let one betrayal turn you into someone who trusts no one. This is where a lot of people break. They get betrayed once and then shut down completely. They doubt every kindness. They become cold, bitter, always defensive. On the outside, they may look stronger, but inside, they are still being controlled by an old wound. Stoicism does not want you to become emotionally frozen. Stoicism wants you to become discerning. There is a big difference. Bitterness is a reaction. Discernment is strength. Bitterness pushes everyone away. Discernment helps you know who should come closer. You do not need to lose faith in humanity. You just need to raise your standard for observing people. Trust more slowly. Open up more slowly. But when you do trust, let it come from observation, not from a desperate need for connection. The fifth lesson: do not use their betrayal as a measure of your worth. This is a lesson a lot of people need to hear. When you are betrayed, the first pain is the wound, but the longer pain is self-doubt. Is there something about me that makes me unworthy of decent treatment? Was I too naive? Am I not good enough, so that is why they treated me like that? No. Let me say it again. No. The fact that someone chose to smile and betray at the same time says nothing about your character. It speaks to the limits of theirs. It speaks to their weakness. It speaks to their lack of courage to live honestly. Maybe you need to learn to observe better. Yes. Maybe you need to learn more about boundaries. Yes. But do not turn someone else's failure into a verdict on your value. Good people are not betrayed because they are stupid. Sometimes it is simply because they could not imagine someone could be that petty. And honestly, that too is a kind of innocence. From now on, it just needs to be paired with wisdom. Marcus Aurelius had a sharp line. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. This is the core of Stoicism. Do not let their dishonesty make you dishonest. Do not let their betrayal turn you into a betrayer.
Do not let their subtle cruelty make you lose your own character. You can become tougher, but do not become crueler. You can become more careful, but do not become smaller. You can trust less easily, but do not lose your integrity. Because in the end, what keeps you standing is not how many bad people you have learned to spot. It is whether you can keep your character in a world full of masks. And there is a very real paradox here. Weak people who smile and betray at the same time often think they are winning. They think they are clever. They think they are skilled. They think they are preserving their image while also getting what they want.
But what they do not understand is that every time they live two-faced, they are eroding their own character. Every time they betray and do not dare admit it, they get weaker. Every time they feel jealous and pretend to congratulate, they get emptier. Every time they do wrong while still acting good, they get further from themselves. A person like that may win a few situations, but they lose their whole inner life. They do not have peace. They do not have real self-respect. They do not sleep with a clean mind. But the person who keeps their integrity, even through pain, even through loss, even if they must walk away alone, still keeps the most valuable thing: unity between the inside and the outside. No performance, no split role, no defense against the mirror. And trust me, living like that is much lighter. Now, let us talk honestly about modern life for a moment. If you are in a competitive work environment, do not share your long-term ambitions with people who have not proven they can be generous. If you are working on yourself, do not tell every step of your growth to people who always need to feel above you. If you are building a new relationship, do not hand over your full trust just because the feelings are good right now. Let time do the filtering. A truly good person is not afraid of time. A fake one usually cannot handle time. Performing for a few weeks is possible. Performing for a few months is exhausting. Performing for a few years, almost impossible. So do not rush. Do not rush to call someone a soulmate just because they understood you when you were vulnerable. Do not rush to put someone in your inner circle just because they are pleasant to be around. And most importantly, do not rush to ignore small signs just because you are afraid to admit you misjudged someone. Sometimes maturity begins the moment you stop mourning the imaginary version of someone and accept who they really are. That is a painful moment, but it is also a freeing one. You no longer have to ask yourself, maybe they did not mean it that way. You no longer have to make excuses for them. You no longer have to force your intuition to stay quiet. You only have to look and accept. Weak people smile and betray at the same time because they do not have enough courage to be clear human beings. They want the benefits of being friendly, but they also want the thrill of causing harm. They want to be liked, but they do not want anyone else to rise above them. They want to keep the mask while feeding the darkness underneath. And do you know what the saddest part is? A lot of people like this have never truly lived. They only react, only defend, only envy, only hide. They wear a mask for so long that they eventually forget their own real face. So if today you are the one carrying a wound from betrayal, remember this: you did not lose everything. You just saw the truth. And the truth, even when it hurts, is always better than illusion. You just learned how to read people more deeply. You just upgraded your standards. You just understood that surface warmth is not enough to prove depth of character. And next time, you will be different. Not because you shut your heart down, but because you are more awake, calmer, deeper. You will no longer be easily seduced by beautiful words. You will look at consistency. You will look at how they behave when there is no more benefit. You will look at how they respond to other people's success. You will look at whether their smile comes with honesty. Because in the end, what gives a person real value is not how likable they are when everything is easy. It is whether they can still be kind, still be upright, still be clear, when discomfort, jealousy, or hurt rises inside them. That is real strength. The strength of a person who does not need a mask. By this point, you might already be remembering a few faces from your life. A few smiles that once made you trust. A few acts of kindness that once softened you.
and then a few cuts that came much later. That is okay. Do not hate yourself for having trusted. Trusting people does not make you weak. Betraying that trust is what is weak. And do not obsess forever over why they did it either. Because often the answer is simpler than we think. They were weak. They were afraid. They were jealous. They did not have the courage to be honest. That is all. The issue now is no longer how much more you understand them. The issue is how you choose to live after understanding. Will you become bitter or aware? Will you close your heart or open your eyes? Will you become a distorted version of yourself because of pain, or become a calmer person because you have seen human nature clearly? That is the real question worth thinking about, because at the end of the day, life is full of people who know how to smile at the right moment. But the people worth keeping in your life are the ones whose nature does not change when they no longer need to smile. And maybe maturity is not learning to doubt everyone, but learning to recognize who no longer deserves deeper access to your inner world. There are some doors, once you know what stands outside them, you do not need to slam them shut. You just do not open them as wide as before.
If this video touched something real inside you, then maybe you now understand that the wound of betrayal does not just teach us pain, it teaches us to see people more clearly, live more deeply, and stay steadier in a world full of masks. And sometimes, the greatest lesson is not how to never be betrayed again, but how to go through all of it without losing your own integrity. If you find content like this worth reflecting on, subscribe to Stoicism for Modern Men so we can walk together on the path to becoming calmer, sharper, and stronger in a world where people are getting harder and harder to read. And now, I want to ask you something. In your opinion, what is the scariest sign of a two-faced person? Is it words that are too sweet, or silence at the exact moment they should have spoken up? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes just one perspective from you can help someone finally see a truth they have been avoiding for a very long time.